More on the story. I'm joined on the line by Dr Azar Jammine. He's the Chief Economist at Econometrix. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. If that strike does go ahead, what's the expected impact on it and what are the practical things that we could expect to see?
I think from a practical point of view, what we will see is people rushing to get cash before Friday and doing as many online transactions as they are able to do prior to Friday. Otherwise, there's also fears of disruption should there be sympathy protests that outside of premises, which could have a negative effect on business. Then, as we have already heard from the South African Revenue Service, it's going to interrupt the processing of tax payments without a doubt. But, if it's a one-day strike, I'm not convinced that the impact will be all that massive on the economy. I think the more negative impact is that it could hasten the desire of bank customers to speed up electronic banking so as to become less dependent on humans for their banking.
Mm-hmm. There is panic in some quarters about the strike. There's about 40 to 50,000 members who, if they're allowed to by the Labour Court, will go and strike. I want to talk about the impact on business relations and worker relations, because Busa is the one trying to interdict the strike, while Sasbo is the one who's trying to strike for its members.
Without a doubt, South Africa's industrial relations are amongst the worst in the world. Every survey, and there are a number of them that actually try and measure and rank South Africa in relation to other countries, have concluded that our industrial relations are amongst the worst in the world. We are near the bottom. This will simply exacerbate that kind of situation. Thus far, most of the tension has been built up in the industrial sphere and the mining sphere rather than in services. But here is a classic example of where services now also start coming into play. And it cannot do any good to the general atmosphere and level of business and consumer confidence in the country. So from that point of view, it's not at all helpful. It's just that when you start talking about the immediate and direct impact on the overall economy, where I'm hopeful that the impact may not be quite as great as many people might fear.
Okay, let's stay with those industrial relations then. The strike is about job losses in part. Bank Zero founder Michael Jordan tweeted that apps don't strike. And there's a sense that this might not help the cause of workers in the sector, not only with those business relations, but with consumers as well.
That is exactly what I have suggested earlier, and that is that what this might do is hasten the alacrity with which consumers will want to move away from relying on going into the bank to do their banking and ever more want to do things online. It's more generally, it's a wake-up call, however, to South Africans to realize that we are now in the fourth industrial revolution. And in such circumstances, there are likely to be job losses due to technological advances. How does one actually prevent that? Does one reverse the pace of technological advancement or not?
Mm-hmm. Dr. Jammine, there's anecdotal evidence that around from the 25th of the month to the final end of the month, there are glitches that take place in the South African banking system, and these seem to be quite systematic, and they happen quite regularly because of people's salaries and deposits coming in. Do you think that tomorrow and Friday people may see an increase in these type of crashes because they won't be able to, if that strike goes ahead, go into the bank or use their ATMs or point of sales as much? And what could happen? What scenarios could emerge from that?
I think you make a very good point. There is likely to be an increase in the amount of electronic banking activity tomorrow. Whether all salary payments are made and organized over this period is uncertain, but certainly many companies and small businesses do pay their staff in the final week of the month, and they will make sure that they try and do that before Friday, in which case, if there are glitches, what it will mean is that a lot of people may not receive their salaries on time on the date that they're normally accustomed to doing. Having said that, how many of such people will then be in such a desperate situation, given that hopefully next week we'll be back to normal electronic banking, and so they may delay being able to purchase things or to make payments for certain of their needs by a couple of days. I don't think it's the end of the world from that point of view. I think more damaging is the psychological impact that this might have on the banking sector in terms of persuading consumers to try and seek a means of banking and financial transactions outside of relying on the human intermediary in between.
Dr Azar Jammine, thanks so much for your time on SABC News, the Chief Economist at Econometrix, joining us on the line on that banking strike there. It's time for a short break.